If we can start our regular town council meeting, it is July 11th. It's 5 p.m. All of council is at the dais. Welcome, everyone. We'll call this meeting to order. We'll start with the pledge and we'll follow it. We'll start with the pledge and followed by the invocation. I'm so sorry.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Hamilton, please.
Heavenly Father, we come now pausing to ask you for your grace and your mercy and your wisdom. Father, that we may conduct this meeting that is fruitful and meaningful to all that are present. Father, we ask for your peace and we ask for your understanding on how to love and serve our people. These and all other blessings we ask in your matchless name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. We have the adoption of the agenda. Mr. C.
Thank you.
Are there any changes?
No, ma'am, no changes to the agenda.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is unanimous. We have a civility pledge that we adopted through our Municipal Association of South Carolina. So if y'all like to read it with me, you may. Pledge to build a stronger and more prosperous community by advocating for civil engagement, respecting others and their viewpoints,
and finding solutions for the betterment of the town of Bluffton.
Thank you. Adoption of the minutes. We had a meeting in June. Y'all had a chance to look over them. Are there any changes? If not, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And
Second.
discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. We have presentations. If y'all will allow me, I'm going to do the student of the month because I think she just popped in before we have the legislative publication. So if we can get Neely up here and her family. Nora is your teacher here? No, you're going to have to do all the talking, Neely. Neely is a third grader at Pritchardville. How are you?
Hi. Is this for these? Are you the oldest?
No, there's one more, but she's a church camp.
Oh, wow.
All girls.
Hi. Is that your teacher? Yeah. Okay, come on, because you were going to have to talk. Good for you. That's my person. Well, we were going to wait for her. I'm sorry. So for those of you who are not regulars, we really celebrate the student of the month character traits of the month. They are done through the school district. We do not govern the school district. We only hope that we have all of our students in the town of Bluffton. So we strive for that. So Pritchardville's in the town limits. You are one student out of about 13,000 in our cluster alone that gets submitted for each month for a character trait. So for the trait of responsibility and cooperation, you were chosen out of all the schools in Bluffton. And then we go to Beaufort, they have somebody. Hilton Head, they have somebody. So we like to celebrate that. So I'm going to ask the teacher if you want to talk about Neely and why she won this.
Sorry, I was running in. It got really backed up back there. I've been teaching for 17 years, just finished up my 17th year, and I went back into the classroom as a homeroom teacher, and this is one of the first years I've ever had a third grader who would be absent for a day, come back in, and do all the work that she missed. Never asked, never said, what did I miss? Do I have to do anything? Most of the time, they're just happy to be in school, much less taking on that responsibility of doing the extra work or even asking. And that was one of the things that stuck out to me as responsibility, because I know that she is a great helper. She's always helpful for me. Just knowing that as a third grader, an 8-9-year-old coming in and just doing the work without even being asked, going back and doing missing work is a big thing. And I was blown away by that, and that was one of the things that I wrote about. I know how responsible she is. She's a great student.
That's amazing. The bar is high for these two.
Yeah.
Okay, picture, let's all get together. So we have a certificate. We also have 2 coins. We have the Town of Bluffton coin and the Bluffton Police Department challenge coin. These don't get given out to very many people. Really only our students that win this. So this came from our chief, it's right there. Our senator from for our area, Senator Davis is here. So you have a great time. So these are for you. And you can hold this and we'll get a picture. Yes.
Oh, smiles.
Congratulations, Oh, how cute. While I'm walking up here, we also have a student, I want council to know, and Spencer McCallum, you'll stand up, Spencer. Spencer is working with Merit Badge, and it's citizenship. So he's here to earn that. If you don't need us to sign anything, just make sure Marcia has it, and we'll make sure we sign anything. Spencer, thank you for being here. Next, we have a legislation session update. Senator Davis asked, come for a few minutes. We love having you here. Just give us a little heads up. We'll get you on the agenda. So you are up. Thank you for coming.
May I pass out some materials?
Here, we'll nice to have you, Senator Davis.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. We did finish up our session. If you'll recall, a few months ago, I outlined for you some things that I was going to be working on during the legislative session. So I want to kind of bookend that with what we actually got accomplished and maybe talk about what we didn't get accomplished and what I hope to get done next year. But what I passed out to you initially is a list of the direct appropriations that were made in the general fund budget to things in Beaufort and Jasper counties. And the way we budget is we go ahead and we fund tax relief first. We then go ahead and make sure the capital reserve and general reserve accounts are funded, the rainy day funds. Then we fund core services. And then there's always money left aside for appropriating out for local projects. I mean, there just is. And, you know, we either sit on the sideline and do nothing about it and complain on philosophical grounds, or once that amount is determined, we get in there as a delegation and do the best we can to make sure our area is treated fairly. And so I wanted to give you an idea of the appropriations that our delegation was able to obtain this year and contrast it with, quite frankly, when I first took office in 2009, we had about $500,000 or $600,000 worth of these sorts of appropriations. This year we had $36 million that we got. And that is primarily a function of Bill Herb Kurzman is vice chairman of House Ways and Means. I serve on Senate Finance Committee. Weston Newton is chairman of House Judiciary Committee. Shannon Erickson is chairman of the Education Committee. Nobody has more committee chairmanships than Beaufort County does. And so while the last 10 years were really, I would call Charleston area years, Berkeley, Dorchester, and Charleston counties got a lot of the money. 10 years prior to that, it was Greenville-Spartanburg corridor. The next 10 years, I firmly believe, are going to be Beaufort and Jasper and sort of the whole Southern Carolina Alliance area in general. And so some of the items I want to draw in particular to your attention, there was a $10 million appropriation to USCB for the new convocation center. That's on top of some appropriations they got in prior years, so they're not quite there yet, but they're close. We also got an $11,500,000 appropriation to TCL for the new workforce training center that's going to be here in Bluffton. Also, $900,000 to the Port Royal Sound Maritime Center. As you come over from Beaufort and cross over, you remember on the right-hand side, if you're heading toward Bluffton, they had that Maritime Center that Dean Moss is involved in with Dick Stewart. So we got an appropriation for that as well. Working with your staff, we identified some particular projects that the town of Bluffton was interested in, and we were able to get a $2 million appropriation for a linear walking trail, which I think is the last piece you need to complete that linear walking trail. I'm not sure, but since I'm moving here, Madam Mayor, we need to have a walking trail, so you got to get that finished up. There's also one of the common themes in talking with each of you before session started was workforce housing was a critical problem. And we were able to get $5 million worth of appropriations for that. We got $3 million to the Beaufort Jasper Regional Housing that you as a member of SOLOCO, I think, were instrumental in setting up. But that $3 million appropriation is one-time money, sort of a seed money on top of what the constituent municipalities and counties have pledged to kind of get that going. I've also highlighted a $2 million appropriation to Hilton Head Regional Habitat for Humanity. Even though the nomenclature is Hilton Head, it's actually going to be across the line in Jasper County. So I think it's going to address some workforce needs here in Bluffton, which is why I included that. We also have in here $1 million to Osprey Village, which is sort of across from where Oldfield is, down that way. $1 million for that, and you can see the others as well, but they total in the aggregate almost $36 million. And again, by giving this report to y'all, you can be thinking about what you want for next year. And if you can get it to me like in, say, October or November, then I can take a first stab at having the governor included in his executive budget, because he starts the process by putting together an executive budget and submitting it to House Ways and Means. And if it's not in the executive budget, then I can work on getting it in the House Ways and Means budget, because anything they don't pick up, I can then get in the Senate version, and then Bill and I can, when they reconcile the two versions of the budget, work to hold both in. So the sooner we can get those requests, the earlier I can kind of put it into that queue and have an opportunity to get more appropriations in the future. Three other things, and then I'll stop. We did get passed legislation that authorizes local governments to use 15% of your ATAX dollars in any given year for workforce housing needs. Okay, so up until this law being enacted this year, you were constrained to use those monies mostly for tourism development purposes. This carves out an exception to that and gives you the option, not the obligation, but the option of tapping into any or all of that revenue stream up to 15%. You could, for instance, use that to meet your obligations to the Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust Fund, for instance. But anyway, it's for each locality to decide whether or not it suits them. We also got a proviso passed for $1.5 million for the Southern Carolina Alliance to step in and take the place of the South Carolina State Ports Authority in connection with the Jasper Port project. One of the major stumbling blocks over the years has been the South Carolina State Ports Authority, as a joint venture partner, really has no desire in seeing something happen there. So getting that proviso in there and clearing a pathway for the 7-member Southern Carolina Alliance to step into their shoes is going to be a huge step forward in that regard. USCB, we talked a little bit about the Convocation Center, but I wanted to highlight something else to you because it also speaks to what our delegation has been able to do. When I took office in 2009, USCB was funded at about 38% of the statewide average per pupil. And we're now up to 100% on a recurring basis. So that's, and TCL, the same thing. K through 12 public education, the same thing. So the delegation working as a whole, because of the committee chairmanship we talked about and because of the seniority that we've gotten, we're finally now not being treated like, you guys just be happy with whatever you get. You're wealthy and rich and don't worry about it. We're getting our equitable share of that. And then lastly, I would say in regard to I-95, that has been fully engineered. Environmental mitigation plans have been approved. The funds have been put into place, and we should start seeing at the end of this year or in January of next year actual work on the grounds, widening to 3 lanes in each direction, I-95 from the Georgia-South Carolina line, where that bridge is, all the way to Exit 8. So that's been funded and engineered, and the plans are in place. So you'll be starting to see work on that relatively soon. And then we're now working on the next segment of that from Exit 8 up to the Walterboro exits. And so, but I'll give you an update on that as time goes along. And then finally, there's going to be, I think, at some point in time, Beaufort County is going to put forward a penny sales tax referendum for road projects. I know, Madam Mayor, you've been working on that as well in terms of what the priorities are for this area, and I look forward to arguing on behalf of that when that time comes. So that's my summary. I'll be happy to answer any questions you all might have. Otherwise, I'll take my seat and be a citizen.
Good work, though.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Next week, under presentations, celebrations, and recognitions, we have David Nellums, who's going to give us the Don Ryan Center update. How are you?
I'm good, Madam Mayor. How are you? Madam Mayor, Council, it's good to see you again. I saw you last in April. So I'll give you another quarterly update real briefly. I know Kevin's got a lot to talk about, so I won't spend a lot of your time. Again, an overview, we've got a lot going on at the facility. I encourage you all to come by. The facility is always busy. Today we had a lunch and learn in conjunction with the Greater Bluffton Chamber of Commerce, and there were probably 40 people in the Don Ryan Center today. And so there's always somebody there. The partnerships are strong. There's always a lot of things going on. The facility you have provided us with is just a fantastic facility of which we're getting a tremendous amount of use of. And more people are aware of the Don Ryan Center. And that location we have right next to Rita's Ice Cream and the UPS store and the park, it's just a fantastic location that you have provided us with. As far as some operations update, as you know, we just added Latoya Salters as a board member, a voting board member, and we added 3 new ex officio members. Tom Hicks, who is actually in the audience today, he didn't know I was going to pick on him. We changed our bylaws to allow up to 10 ex officio members. As you remember, we used to have 5, and those 5 used to be from certain different industries or things like that. We changed all that as well, so we have a little more flexibility. We actually met with the Ryan family in Providence College from up in the Northeast. That college wants to start a Ryan incubator within that college, and they wanted to talk to us to see what we've done and best practices for how we do things and that type of thing. We've always updated the Don Ryan website. We had the One Blood bus the other day, and our CRM HubSpot, we actually reduced our pricing on that by about 35%. So we're lowering prices on how we do our business. As far as the companies, if you walk into the Don Ryan Center, you see this wall there of all the companies we've worked with in the startup or growth program phase. There are 16 companies in the Don Ryan Center now. That is a record. The previous record was 12 a number of years ago. And that does not include the 3 that just popped out a little while ago. So we really had 19. And again, we attribute this to better staffing with Paul Titus, who didn't know I was going to pick on as well. He's here also. Paul does a great job, but being more involved with our partners, more awareness of what we're doing, it's really going really well. We just signed the Hardyville partnership again. Hardyville executed it today, a 3-year term as opposed to a 1-year term. So that'll give us funding for Hardyville and general funding for the Don Ryan Center as well. So a lot of companies at the Don Ryan Center, almost an even split between the startup companies and the growth companies, as you can see there. We used to think it would be kind of 2 or 3 to 1 more startup than growth, and it's really almost 1 to 1. And all types of things, from Gullis Teas and Tings, which is a apparel company, to coffee, to trucking, to vertical gardening, to automotive software, to pet automation software, to ice cream, to drones, everything and everything in between for the Don Ryan Center. As far as how we judge our performance, again, 16 companies looking to add 2 to 4 more in the next 60 days. And a nice stat, 73% of the companies we've worked with are still in business. And if you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and I'll read a little bit of that, shows that approximately 80% of new businesses survive the first 2 years, but only 55% survive 5 years, and only 35% survive 10 years. So the companies we are working with are, by and large, doing better than an average company that's not been in an incubator. 67% of them are in Bluffton. That's trending up a little bit. Still haven't reached our goal on 75%, but it's going up a little bit every few months. And we are hitting all our numbers, and we are working hard to give Bluffton and its citizenry the business incubator and the business help they need. So with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Do we have questions, David?
I just want to say I saw your report, and it's impressive, and the retention that you just mentioned and the growth that you've expanded into. So it sounds like y'all are hitting all cylinders. So good job.
Questions on this side? Okay, thank you, David.
Thank you.
Next, we have public comment. We offer public comment once during our council meetings. We support and we encourage public comment, but it is a privilege. It is not a right in municipal government. We're not required to have it, but we feel it's important for you to have your 3 minutes and address council for any concerns you may have. During public comment, you're limited to 3 minutes, whether the person is speaking on their own behalf or an agent for others. You may not donate or transfer or yield or give any or portion of your speaking time to another person. It's supposed to be conducted from the podium. You are to direct town council, not the audience. You shall refrain from comment or behavior that involves disorderly speech or action, name calling, personal attacks, threats, obscene or indecent remarks, or disruptive actions. If you want to dedicate your time and let someone else read yours, it has to be someone who's not been at public comment already. Person, 3 minutes. And we have to read this because it was mentioned to us at a municipal association to make sure the rules are clear. We've had an attorney general opinion say that our rules of decorum are reasonable, and we are following the section 249 of our town code. So when you come up, please give me your name and address. We might know you, but we need Marcia to be able to listen to it tomorrow to know who it was that said what. So please give us your name and address when you come up to speak. So I'll put it in Marcia's hands. How many do we have tonight?
We have 2 this evening.
Okay.
Skip Hoagland.
Mr. Hoagland. Name and address, please, sir, and you have 3 minutes.
Skip Hoagland, Windmill Harbor. Ms. Sulka, we need a law compliance pledge. You send emails from your town and personal emails to Bill Miles, the Chamber, Kim Likens, and Bill Harkins, past Hilton Head Council members, to stop and get Skip Hoagland. Is it not a fact both Likens and your defamation lawsuits were both frivolous and malicious, schemed with you and others? Ms. Sulka, I'm in the technology business, and these emails have been captured off these servers and will be used for my $50 million lawsuit against you. You committed perjury under oath as a crime in your deposition at the Murdoch lawyer's office that I attended. We have this live fully documented and assume you know about this. You did an alleged illegal membership drive with Mark Orlando and Terry Finger using town employees on town time to sell 500 memberships for Bill Miles and the Hilton Head Bluffton Chamber to try to put your own official Greater Bluffton Chamber out of business. We have emails, and you owe the $140,000 in damages to your own Greater Bluffton Chamber. You used illegal tax money to join the town of Bluffton with Orlando to become a Hilton Head Chamber member versus your own money. Who is a member since you used tax money? Just you and town employees, or all taxpayers in Bluffton? Plus, Hilton Head Chamber is using millions in tax funds illegally. Ms. Sulka, is it not a fact the $50 million judgment you won against me with your crooked Murdoch lawyers was frivolous, malicious, and schemed to silence my voice on your lies and corruption? Is it not a fact your lawsuits were ruled against the rule of law, and even a judge caught lying, saying he saw enough evidence in law to go to trial? Ms. Sulka, you understand I will seek in my lawsuits the same $50 million from you. The bar has been set since you've lied with your Murdoch lawyers. Ms. Sulka, you committed illegal acts, criminal perjury, and schemed to harm not only me, but my innocent wife, who also you accuse of committing fraud and conspiracy to hide $50 million God knows where. It's massive insanity. You will pay a big price, Ms. Sulka. You are in big trouble. You and your crooked Murdoch lawyers will never collect an insane $50 million judgment against me. Fact is, you will owe me $50 million for your illegal acts and extreme violations of my First Amendment rights. I never defamed you. I spoke the truth about you. Your lawyer Finger and Orlando past manager will be held liable for their lies and their damages and their fraud. Removing me by police force, violating my POA and my First Amendment, which you're going to do today and we're all going to witness, is only going to increase my damages against you. Thank you very much.
Lynn Greeley.
Lynn Greeley.
I'm here, and I've submitted a POA to Mr. Finger. Please don't interrupt me.
Well, I am interrupting.
I don't interrupt you. Please show me the same respect that I show you. Please do not interrupt me. Please.
Lynn Greeley is not here. You cannot
I gave a POA. I'm here to speak for Ms. Greeley's 3 minutes with a POA, which is a legal law document.
You're out of order.
No, you're out of order.
No,
You're
I am
interrupting
running
me.
this
You're
meeting. You're
showing
out of order.
disrespect.
If
Please
you're
respect me, Ms. Sulka.
Public comment.
Please do not disrespect me. Please.
Do it every month, sir.
So I'm going to start start my 3 minutes, Mr. Finger, if you don't mind.
No, you've been ruled out of order.
Mayor has ended public comment. You've been ruled out of order.
That's a rule, that's not a law.
You can either have a seat or.
No, that's a made-up
go through the
rule, that's
same
not a
process.
law.
We're trying to move forward with the meeting.
I'm
You're
sorry,
disrupting a
let me
public
start.
meeting.
So I'm going to start.
If you
Ms.
start,
Soka,
we're
I
gonna have-
celebrated the $50 million reward in your frivolous defamation lawsuit. Your ambulance chasing Murdoch lawyer was able to win purely on your crocodile tears, your emotions, and your drama. Please let me finish my speech. What do you mean I got to go? I just submitted a POA
Public comment has been
document.
ruled over. We're trying to move forward with the meeting. Right now, you're disrupting the public.
Sheriff Tanner
the public
said,
meeting.
do not do this.
We have
Well, you should listen to
communications from mayor
him.
and
You're a
council.
hired sheriff in Bluffton, and he's the elected official of Beaufort County Sheriff. I want to finish my speech. Will you guys put your hands off of us?
We have communications from mayor and council. I'll look to Bridget or Larry, anything for the good?
Yeah. So I have 3 items for the good. First, on behalf of the Bluffton MLK Observance Committee, a huge thank you to the citizens of Bluffton and to the town for partnering again on the 8th annual Juneteenth Festival weekend, which was an amazing celebration of events throughout that 3-day weekend. It was great attendance, and so we were just grateful for everyone who was there. Also, I want to commend town staff and everyone for the organizing and planning of the Independence Day event. That was also a huge success. There were so many people out in attendance, and everyone's just raved about how great that event was. And I know it wasn't an easy feat to be able to pull all those events together, but you guys did a great job, and a lot of people especially appreciated that the fireworks went longer this year. So great job again to the town and staff on that. And lastly, everyone is invited this Thursday at 6 p.m. We're having a champion celebration for our Olympian Charlotte Lewis, who won 3 medals, 2 bronze and 1 gold medal at the Special Olympics in Berlin, Germany. She won gold in a 200-meter for kayaking, and so we're asking everyone to come out to Wright Family Park at 6 p.m., where she'll be able to go around and get a circle of congratulations, and there's a list of items that she enjoys that anyone coming can bring to drop in her winner's wagon. And so I'm sure we're going to communicate more of that through our social media pages.
And she'll also be getting a key to the town.
And she will be getting a key to the town.
Hopefully.
You can have mine if we don't
Just
have
ditto
one.
No, I'm good. I agree with what Bridget just said. No need to repeat it. Great. Thanks to everyone.
One thing that I think through just the changeover of our town clerks, an email got lost from Queen Quet. She's always come every July for a proclamation for her Gullah Geechee Nation Appreciation Week. And I saw an email today, or a voicemail, that something fell through the cracks, and she understands. But I do want to let everyone, we are writing a proclamation, and we'll get it to her to read. But they have, the theme of the event is Celebrating Gullah Geechee Resiliency, and it starts July 29th at noon at Historic St. Helena at the Penn Center, and it goes through August 5th. So we've missed a council meeting to let her talk about it, but I just wanted to get that out to everyone, and we'll make sure. Also, thank you, young man, for being here. We pride ourselves on civility. We pride ourselves on transparency. We have never not allowed. One time we stopped the public comment and we got sued, but you know what? We won because we felt the judge and jury found that the basis for that removal was the judge and jury. So I'm sorry that y'all have to see this, but he consistently breaks our rules, and we can provide rules of decorum. We can do that as a town. So I would be more than willing to read someone's public comment if they can't be here, and I've offered it, but it's just an ability to get videoed. So I apologize for y'all because we have a lot of business to do today. Mr. Finger, did you have something?
Yeah, I would just like to state that we were notified within the last week or 10 days that Mr. Hoagland is now represented by counsel out of Columbia on these public comment issues. We received 2 emails from Mr. Hoagland yesterday,
and I responded to Taylor Smith, the lawyer for Mr. Hoagland, at 8:55 this morning by email. Taylor, I'm responding to emails from Skip Hoagland yesterday at 8:28 p.m. and the second at midnight. You were copied on both emails. Skip Hoagland has informed the town of Bluffton that you represent him in these, quote, public comment matters, and therefore I cannot ethically communicate directly with him. Once the lawyer is put on notice that the other side is represented by counsel, I cannot have direct communication with Mr. Hoagland, so I wrote to his lawyer this morning. The town of Bluffton rules allow 3 minutes of public comment per individual. The rules do not allow someone to speak longer than 3 minutes, whether they have a power of attorney or given time from someone else, etc. We sought an opinion from the South Carolina Attorney General, and the opinion was that our rules are legal, proper, and enforceable. Skip Hoagland is aware and familiar with the town's rules and the AG opinion. He simply thinks he does not have to comply. If Mr. Hoagland chooses not to comply with the 3-minute time limit at our town council meeting tonight, he can expect to be ruled out of order. He will be asked to leave the podium, either sit down or leave the chamber. If he refuses, he will be asked to leave the podium by the Bluffton police officers present. If he refuses to comply, he will be escorted out and be given another town citation. This is exactly what I told Mr. Hoagland before the meeting in June, and he chose to ignore the rules. I will be happy to discuss this matter with you if you desire. I will be in the office all day. I did receive a response from Mr. Smith indicating that he has informed Mr. Hoagland of this email. And at 4:53 this morning, not 4:53 this afternoon, right before our meeting, Mr. Hoagland presented our town clerk with the power of attorney. I again reminded Mr. Hoagland that he had a total of 3 minutes, whether he had a power of attorney or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I did forget something, because we have a lot of business to do tonight, but I was somewhere and I walked by and we have a new magazine called Bluffton and the Low Country, and I love that because it said Bluffton and the Low Country. And who is on the cover but our Councilwoman Bridget Frazier. So I opened and read about yours and Billy Watterson's, how you met, and just all the things going on with Ma Daisies and your efforts to really, truly promote and support the Black businesses, the Gullah businesses, and have a true place with this Heritage Center. So a lot of people talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. And I love the article. So y'all pick it up. It was June's issue, and I don't know when it came out, but I just saw it. But very cool. It was a great magazine of all the things going on in Bluffton. So that was really cool.
Is it possible for autographed copies?
Anything for you, Dan.
Super. So communications are over. We have formal agenda items, and we have a busy night. And I think Kevin is just going to get a seat up here. He is first. No, Chris is first. Consideration of a resolution to approve a proposed contractual agreement with First Citizens Wealth Management relating to financial advisory investment services. And is this a resolution? Is it a first reading?
Resolution.
Okay. That's what it says.
That's right.
Yeah.
So good evening, Mayor and Council. As you read, this is regarding a contractual arrangement with a financial institution for investment services. So you all well aware of all the work we've done over the many years to build up our reserves, develop a reserve policy, and most recently we achieved a AAA rating by Moody's Investor Services. And now we're talking about how can we best manage those dollars as they sit idle in our accounts. But really quick, I would summarize our adopted investment policy. You guys adopt this as part of the financial policies during the budget process. So if you look at your binders back at home, this will be in there in a much more in-depth, I think it's a page and a half. But this is a summary here. And it basically says that we will strive to obtain the best possible return, but not invest beyond when funds are expected to be needed. It prioritizes our objectives in safety, which is your return of your investment, liquidity, when you might need those dollars for use, and then yield, which is return on your investment. And then, of course, we have to comply with all state law, and some of the authorized investments that are listed in the investment policy are U.S. obligations, federal banking institutions, general obligations of the state, savings and loan associations that are insured by the federal government. Oh, I spelled that wrong, I apologize. Certificates of deposits that are collaterally secured, repurchase agreements that are collateralized, local government investment pools, and interest-bearing depository accounts. So this is a look at our cash today, grouped by our major funds. As you can see, we have about $76.8 million in cash, and these are all in different funds for different purposes, much of which was reserved for different projects, as well as reserved as part of our fund balance policy. And then, of course, debt service to pay off debt, and there's a lot of TIF funds in there as well for capital projects. So this is our cash flow trend over time. This is the most recent 5 years. As you go along this, these dips typically happen in November, December. Those are the low points in cash throughout the year as we spend down through our operations, and that's right before we get our property tax payments, which you'll see the next few months jumps because those are when property taxes come in. You'll see in 2021, I don't know if y'all recall, but there was that issue between the county auditor and the county treasurer with the bills going out, so that is a little more gradual, not as much of a spike. And obviously, where we're at right now is in the mid-60 millions for not, that excludes the bond proceeds amount, which you saw on the previous chart. So in the past, Fed rates have been significantly low in recent years, and we didn't always have this amount of money sitting aside, so we haven't really actively managed our cash. It's primarily sat in several depository accounts with Wells Fargo, Palmetto State, and then in 2019, we put $1.5 million in the local and government investment pool, and this is a pooled government investment fund that the state treasurer manages. And this is a 5-year look at what our interest earnings have been. Obviously, with rates so low in the past, they haven't been significant, 50,000, 70,000 here or there. 2023, obviously a very large jump, and that's because of the Fed rates increases that you've seen over the past 12 to 18 months. And that 410,000 is on all of our accounts, that total 76.7 million. So why are we doing this? We want to more proactively manage our cash. One, we want to diversify. We want to diversify between financial institutions as well as types of accounts and investments. And we want to put our reserves to work. So right now we're in a low yield, relatively low to no risk situation with our sitting in depository accounts. Although there is some risk because you have a lot of cash in accounts that may not fully be insured by federal government, which is a whole other issue. But you want to shift to some higher yielding accounts that are still low risk investments. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. And we look at our bond proceeds. So we issue bonds, we take in those cash, and it sits there until we spend it on projects. So there's a spend timeline based on the project timeline, and you can earn interest on those bond proceeds up to what you're actually paying on interest. Anything above that is arbitrage, and you have to pay back to the federal government. So you want to maximize what you can legally yield on those bond proceeds that sit in your accounts until they're spent. And then, of course, we want to prepare ourselves for future Fed rate cuts as rates go down again. So we want to avoid getting back to a position where we're only making 50 grand a year. Some of our considerations as we evaluate this, obviously risk is huge. By law, we're restricted on pretty low risk investments overall, but there's always risk involved in any kind of investment you make. Your liquidity needs, so looking at throughout the year, when do we need cash, at what periods, looking at some unique considerations like obviously hurricane season, so you want to make sure that you have enough sitting aside in case something were to happen so you can respond quickly. What are your return expectations? What are you hoping to return in balance with your risk? You want to find a nice balance there based on your risk acceptability. And then historical and anticipated cash flows throughout the year, which I showed you that and where it dips and increases throughout the fiscal year. So when we sought out investment services, we used GFOA as a template, much like we did with our reserve policy. They have guidance on this type of solicitation for services. So we drafted our RFP based on those best practices. We had a review committee of the accounting and risk manager, director of finance, and the assistant town manager, myself. We conducted interviews and reference checks, and we ultimately landed on the best qualified bidder of First Citizens Wealth Management. I will comment that the reference checks were government entities within South Carolina, and they all came back extremely positive and glowing, which was really nice to see as well. You don't always get people to respond to those, but they all definitely did. So First Citizens, they were founded in 1898. They are in 22 states. Well, they're probably even more now, which I'll talk in a minute, with 600 locations. They are publicly traded. They had $110 billion in assets. That has doubled. They are the bank that acquired Silicon Valley Bank that went underwater out in California. So they acquired that bank. So I believe their assets have now doubled, and they are a top 20 U.S. bank in the U.S. So they had client relationships of over 1,300, and this is the wealth management division. And their total assets were $17.1 billion. Their municipal clients were 65 different municipal clients, and municipal assets managed is $807 million with an average client investment of $12.4 million. The team that we'll be working with, and some of them are here today, you can raise your hand when I mention it. Dave Lobeck is a VP of Business Development. His career is 35 years going strong. Grant Cato, Institutional Consultant, 23 years. Neil Chapman, Senior Portfolio Strategist, 23 years. Hank Dunbar is Manager, 42 years. And our local contacts, Justin Rice, who is a Market Executive, and Ethan Cox couldn't make it tonight, but he's the local Business Development Officer here at the branch here. So their approach, and this was outlined in their RFP, they sit down with the client and review their investment policies, and they identify what the objectives are. And they use that information to kind of formulate their strategy and looking at the capital market expectations over the next 1, 2, 3 years. They try to optimize the portfolio based on these analyses, and obviously they offer ongoing monitoring and reporting and constant communication with their clients. So their strategies that they outlined for us are yield curve positioning. So when you have falling interest rate environments, you extend the durations of those investments, and rising interest rate environments, you shorten those durations. And then trading actively security selection within allowed investments that we mentioned prior to maximize these yields at each of those investment dates. So this is a look at the Fed funds rate since '99, and you can see here periods where they increased the rate and where you saw a significant drop-off. Obviously, our interest earnings that I showed in prior slides was around here, which is why we were only getting $50,000. And then there was this increase right here, and here we are right now. And based on conversations with them and others, there's an expectation that this will plateau. So we'll see another one of these plateaus happening over the next year or so. And I'm going to use this one as an illustrative example that they provided me. So here, what we're looking at is the blue line here is the Fed funds rate, the period that I just circled for you. That gray line is that pooled LGIP fund, state fund. And basically, they're very straightforward in their investment, just one type of investment, and it pretty much follows that Fed funds rate over time. And then the red line is their First Citizens ladder portfolio. And again, that's when they structure their investments based on that, the expectation of the interest rates and the term of those investments, and they try and balance a longer term average return on the investment. So there are short periods where, if the Fed fund rate spikes, where they may not quite exceed performance of that, but over time they much more outperform. And we're seeing this type of spike right here currently, according to them, which is why they want to help us lock into a certain type of ladder portfolio that will take advantage of those rates. This is their fee schedule, and it's based on the total amount of dollars invested, and that's the annualized fee. And just an example, we asked them to provide a mock portfolio if we were to give them $10 million as an example. And they chose a 0 to 3-year treasury portfolio with an estimated yield to maturity of 5.12%, with an estimated annual return of over $500,000. And again, that $500,000 is just on that $10 million. And if you saw on a previous slide, we had $76.8 million and made 400-something thousand. So it gives you a little example of the scalability there. And then the estimated fees would be about $35,000 with a net return of $477,000. So what questions can I answer for you?
I have a few, but I'm gonna let everyone's questions here. If you have questions, you want to think about it, I can look left first.
I just have one, Chris, one place where I didn't understand at the very beginning where it said the returns where it was 50,000, 60, 70, and then you had a 410?
Yep.
That's a return or that's an estimated, because it was for year 220, for 23?
Those are our interest earnings, the FY23, the year that just ended. This year that just ended, yeah.
So that's actual.
Yep. And that is because of what you saw, the spike right here.
Right.
So, and we are currently, the banking institutions, they're 0.3%, but again, there's $75 million in those accounts, so 0.3% of that is quite a bit. And then the LGIP earned quite a bit over the past year because of those Fed fund increases.
So changing to this, if we approve this, this will give you the opportunity to do much more with much more money.
Yes.
So basically, we have a lot of money that's not really doing anything.
Correct.
And then we have some that's doing a little bit.
Right.
So this is just kind of leveling the field to get the most out of.
Yes, and also to help us prepare for these periods.
Yeah, got it. That's all I've got.
Mayor, I do have a question. So as with anything, Chris, I do have a question about, and before I do that, I forgot to congratulate you and the finance department on getting us that, the rating that you did through the Moody credit reporting. And we are one of only 5 municipalities in the state with it, so good job to you guys. So as with anything, there are risks associated. What are the potential risks here?
Yeah, I would say probably the biggest risk is making sure that we structure the portfolio to meet our liquidity needs, our cash flow needs. They're as you saw, most of what they're investing in are U.S. Treasuries, which are probably one of the lowest risk type of investments you can have. So the chances of us not getting our principal back is extremely low. Really, the risk is, are we going to get as much as if it's in other types of accounts, or are we going to meet our cash flow needs? And those are what we work very closely with them, structuring based on what we see our budgetary needs throughout the year are, what our capital project needs are, and their project timelines. So staff will work very closely with them on that.
And are there other municipalities that you've had or have been able to research to see what their successes in going down this route have been?
Yeah, they may be able to refresh my memory, but I believe Horry County, or Horry County, excuse me, I apologize.
Could be.
Horry County.
Kind of is.
And they gave a great reference. I believe the water district in Easley.
Easily combined utilities.
Yep, their utility district is another one that gave a great reference. And there was a third as well. Fairfield County. Yeah.
What type of increase did they see, or what did they yield with their?
I didn't ask them on the specific yields, but it would be similar to what you're seeing right here, because this is the type of investments that they would offer right here, this red line.
Thank you.
Anything up here? Yes, sir, Mr. Hamilton, and then Mr. Wood.
Bridget, those were great questions. Thank you. What time period are we looking to invest, and how much funds are we looking to invest?
So the example given was a 0 to 3 ladder portfolio. So they'd have different maturities throughout it, up to 3 years, and they would stagger it so that you wouldn't have all your eggs into a 3-year commitment. You'd stagger it to meet your cash flow needs. I don't have that chart in this, but, and then as far as the amount, we're looking at 10 to 15, but again, we're going to have to look at what that looks like.
10 to 15 what?
Million, sorry. Apologize.
Of the 75 million.
Right, yeah. And then we also might do a separate one for the bond proceeds that are sitting there and structure that based on the project schedules.
Thank you.
Yes, so it's layered, short duration, basically 3 years or less, treasury bonds primarily. And I'm assuming, like most places, are these insured or they're not insured or because of the size of the dollar? How does that work?
Well, they're backed by the federal government, right?
Yes, the investments are backed by the full faith and obligation of the United States government. There'll be treasury bonds held in a trust account in the town's behalf.
And so there isn't really we're not, since we're investing the people's money, it's not like if we're investing our own, there isn't a target yield.
Right.
Is that correct? We're just looking at what the interest rates are by the Fed, and we're trying to adjust and move with those to what works best for us. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And then the last part of this is, and you and I touched on it briefly one day, but is there hedging in here at all, or it's not needed, is it? I mean, okay.
Correct.
No options, just it's not needed.
You're shaking your head no? Or,
That's right.
okay.
No hedging
You're
is
saying
correct,
yes, but you're saying no.
Okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do have a couple of things, and I might be asking crazy questions, but I guess it's because I'm married to someone who looks at money. So first I thought you were putting all of it in there, so maybe we're talking about less than 20 million.
Yeah.
If we have a hurricane and a horrible disaster, are you putting that reserve fund in there? Okay,
Not
so
in
we would
entirety.
have that access.
Yeah.
You're putting money in there treasury, okay, that helps. So they're treasury bonds. Is there some I don't know if it's called a stop point or if there's some hold if we see we're starting to lose our principal? Is that something you're worried about, or is it because we're buying treasury bonds, we just might have a zero, we're not going to lose the principal on
Right.
it,
The
right?
chance of us losing principal is very, very slim. You never say there's no risk, but I mean, full faith and credit of the U.S. government is pretty good. The risk is, if we get to a point for whatever reason, whether there's a major collapse or huge disaster, and we have to pull out of the bonds prior to the maturity, I think there's some kind of penalty fee, which I don't know.
Well, that was my follow-up question. If we had to pull something out because of whatever, a natural whatever, and we need more than our reserve fund, have we negotiated a penalty fee? Is there a penalty for pulling it?
Yeah, I don't think they determine the penalty fee. I think it's determined by the federal government, but there is one, yes.
It would be determined really if you're cashing in one of these treasury bonds prior to maturity. You would receive the face value of that bond. Okay. You're sort of in the best of all worlds right now because when interest rates start to decline, which they're anticipated to do in 24, value of bonds go in inverse relationship to interest rates. So the value of those bonds will increase. And the beauty of this is that from a liquidity standpoint is that the portfolio at any time, you have the trading day plus 2 additional days, and all these assets can be liquidated and put back into the town's banking accounts in the event of emergency.
Another question. First Citizen is buying banks, but wonder if Daddy Bank of America takes over First Citizen and we don't like who they put as what is our clawback on that?
Right, clause, yeah. That's something we can negotiate as part of the contract, yes.
Okay. I had one more thing, but I guess that's all. I'm excited about it. Oh, it goes to the insured. So we have a lot of money. What's the FDIC insurance in banks right now? To what amount did you say?
$250, but $250,000 per Social Security number.
So are we okay with all the rest of our money at these banks? I guess that's my question.
We're required to be collateralized as part of our audit standards. Anything we have in the bank, they have to collateralize it with other institutions to make sure. So anything we have in the bank is collateralized.
Because you brought that up, it made me worry.
And just one more point to make to everybody. I've been talking to Chris about this for a few years, or a while now. What this will help us do, instead of like the money, our bonds and stuff that we're paying interest on, even though this probably won't turn out to be a profit, but we've got this money to use to do our projects and stuff, and this will offset a huge part of the interest that we're paying to have that money to do these projects that we're wanting to do, if you get what I'm saying. Instead of just paying interest, we'll be collecting interest until it's time to spend the money.
Any other questions? I love the fee calculation. That's less than what for nonprofits. So thank you. Okay, if there's nothing else, is there a motion to approve a resolution to enter into a contract and fiduciary relationship with First Citizens Bank and Trust Company as an investment advisor to the town of Bluffton?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I'm guessing we'll get updates and statements and all those fun things, Chris?
Yes, absolutely.
Any other discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Well, very thorough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin, you're only up here once.
Yeah, but it's all night.
And he should read his own agenda item. Poor Natalie learned it. You. Let's read it. This is about a consideration of an ordinance for certain amendments to the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinances, Chapter 23, including amendments to Article 3, the application process, Section 3.2, Section 3.14, Section 3.17, Section 3.18, Section 3.19, 2.5, Article 4, which is Section 4.4, Article 5, Section 5.8, 11, 13, and 15, Article 7, Article 9, which is Section 9.2 and 9.3, 9.4.1. You understand this, Spencer? So our UDO is a living and breathing document, and we're finding things all the time that can be changed. And this is staff knowing there's some things that need to be changed, and this was from a partner meeting with the Planning Commission and Town Council, and it was a lot, so it took a month to get back to us. So, you're up. And
All
this
right.
is first reading.
Yes, ma'am, you are correct. Thank you. So we're going to start on page 1 of 36 pages,
Yeah.
so shouldn't take us too long, right?
Kevin, I'm here.
I know.
First pitch is 8 o'clock.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. We are here for the first reading for the various UDO edits that you referenced. As you had requested through the strategic plan, you wanted to have an annual update. So what we've been doing is we've been working behind the scenes, initially starting in January when we had our joint public meeting with Town Council and Planning Commission. Got a lot of great feedback. From there, we worked through going in front of the Historic Preservation Commission from a workshop discussion for items specifically in the historic district, so that way they could provide input. And then you see the 4 dates up here where we had an opportunity to go through all of those items for public hearings and recommendations that went in front of them and ultimately to you. So just hitting the highlights of these. So at that March Planning Commission meeting, we went over specifically for a COFA, a Certificate of Appropriateness, in order for contributing structures, if there's new construction or there's additions, relocation or demolitions, provided additional information of clarity. I think that's a good way of putting it. We've learned from some of the projects that have come through, some of the information that we needed to update, so that's what's in there. Also, for the designation of a contributing resource, we had how to designate it, but we didn't have any process for how to have it delisted. So we've included that information. We've had a lot of formatting issues, typos. And I've got a slide here for the minimum front setbacks in the the core and the center districts, just to be able to push some of these buildings back. We were realizing that a zero lot line for a front setback was just not appropriate. Also, removing that large building footprint, since we had already reduced, if you remember, we reduced the square footage on buildings. This was no longer necessary, so we removed that section completely. Other items included the carriage house building form, just clarity on what is a carriage house, as well as our garden structures, and then how to determine the size of those, and then multiple terms specifically in the historic district. So here's that slide. I'm not going to go through all of it, but you can just see that a lot of our building types in both neighborhood core and center, we've updated the front setback requirements on those.
And remind, just for the audience, what color is that on your big
So
map? I know
it's represented by the star over there. So a maroon,
okay, I see.
cardinal, and brown. In April, we worked on specifically for our certificate of construction compliance, and this is for development when it's coming through, guarantees to make sure that they're installing the necessary infrastructure. Other items include outdoor sales, how we define them, what conditions are associated with them. There was a lot of questioning as to what we classified for outdoor sales, both if you're a retail business that you want to put some product outside versus you are a business that sells items outside, like a nursery, like a plant nursery. So clarity there, clarity for parking. We eliminated the public parking facility requirement. And what this was is that any business had the opportunity to count any public parking within 500 feet of their property, and the problem is that you overlap with that. So we clarified and reduced that, reducing the number of the percentages for compact spaces, so that way you wouldn't be able to have a lot of additional parking spaces that were compact.
Before you move on.
Yep.
The top line there, the certificate of construction compliance.
Yes, sir.
How does that get implemented?
In reference to?
Well, what you're saying is you're strengthening the requirement for the building. You know, I bring this up because years ago, we all know something happened that nobody ever went to check on it. Nobody called.
Right.
So it's all lies with the builder, the construction of the project to place the call to the town.
Absolutely. And then they cannot get their certificate of occupancy of a building until they have their certificate of construction compliance. And what we've done is it was subjective in the code as to what was necessary for meeting those final requirements. So we have it set up for a temporary certificate of construction compliance, and then you have to provide that 75% completeness. So the onus is on the engineer to provide the documentation to show that they have met that requirement.
Or this isn't a workshop, this is a formal item. So
Yes.
do you want to go through this presentation, or if y'all ask for questions, do you want me to let council?
Sure, I'm happy either way.
Just
So
get my-
It's so many of them, it's
I know,
probably
it might
better
be
to ask
worth-
as we go.
absolutely, yes, I'm happy to
Give me
if you
that.
have any previous ones, I'm happy to go back to them as well.
So then because I was holding mine to the end,
too.
if you want to go back to the first one, then I had a question.
You have something to say? Okay.
So on the designation of a contributing resource, section 3.25, I didn't see the updated process and how to remove a structure that's currently on.
So it is.
I read that it was a process, but I didn't read
Right.
the process.
I was just interested to see what
I read the whole process. It is.
So the process is already in the UDO. What we're doing is we're just saying we didn't have anything to say that you could delist it. So
Right.
it shows how you can do it, and it's the exact same, it's the same information that's going to be necessary to put it on the list as it is to request to take it off the list.
Good.
So it's just adding that statement to say delist.
Good, and it's just giving that option because previously we didn't provide that.
Yes, ma'am, you're correct.
And I'm glad to see that because that is a issue that a lot of structures those who own structures are dealing with in terms of how to go through that process of removing it if it wasn't historic, to be able to make some renovations. And then my other issue was, oh, you're not there at 5.8 yet. So that was it for that one.
Okay.
Oh, wait, go back to that. Anybody have questions on the March amendments? Okay.
Okay. So we just talked about the construction compliance, the outdoor sales, and then parking.
Does anyone have questions on the April?
Question on parking.
Okay.
25 or more parking spaces, reduce percentage from 25 to 10, and how is that going to improve our UDO?
How it's going to improve, what we're finding out is that this 25% requirement, it's too high for allowance for compact parking spaces. Meaning right now that if you're required to have 4 parking spaces, you can have one of them that is compact. And what we're realizing is that if you have a parking lot that is over that 25 mark, we'll just start with 40. If you have a parking lot that's 40 parking spaces, 10 of them could be a compact car space. And I'm not sure about you guys, I'm not sure what type of vehicles you drive, but compact car spaces are very small, and we have difficulties with people getting in them. So what we're doing is saying, instead of having 10 of them that could be that compact space, we're now saying that you could have 4 of them that could be a compact space.
So you're only talking about compact parking spaces,
Yes.
not regular parking.
Yeah, not regular, I'm sorry. Yeah, just the compact spaces, yes.
Well, I was on his page, I'm like, what?
That only pertains to compact.
Only compact, yes.
Yeah, I didn't read that. Any other questions on this? Okay, I think this might be.
Okay, and then the other item is that we're eliminating the allowance to use as golf cart spaces to meet your compact spaces. Because right now, we're saying that you could, again, let's go back to the 40 parking spaces, 10 of them could be a compact. Well, those 10 could also be golf cart parking. So what we're doing is we're saying that you can't say you can have a golf cart parking space to meet your parking requirements. You can still have golf cart parking spaces, just not to meet those minimum requirements. Okay? All right. Some of the other items in April, we're dealing with the requirements for illegal nonconformities. We already have it set up for, it was to, in the code, it says that the UDO administrator will determine if there's an illegal nonconformity. Well, illegal nonconformities, if they are there, they already exist. We don't need the UDO administrator to make that determination. It's already there. We also have amendments to the definitions for family. And at this one, this is a federal regulated definition. Terry can chime in if he needs to.
This is compliments of Washington.
Yes. So we're updating our document to be consistent. And then just a description of what an accessory dwelling unit is. Any questions?
Anything on this page, council?
I don't really understand what that's saying, but
Sounds like we have to have it. Anything from this side?
if it's federal law, I guess we got to have it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay,
Yeah.
everyone's good.
Okay. Next off, in May, we focused on the certificate of appropriateness in the highway corridor overlay district. And we're just clarifying the language to say that you are required to have a final development plan prior to the approval of a certificate of appropriateness. And what that does is clearly establishes the land development side of things, so it's clear as to what is approved, and then the COFA is then approved on top of that land development plan. A lot of housekeeping items in the lot and building standards. And then based off of previous discussions, we've looked to remove that large lot type in the light industrial, and then adjust some of the setback requirements as well as height requirements, reductions of height. And a lot of those items are for consistency with the comprehensive plan, because of our land use plan is calling for projects that, staying in that 3-story, 4-story area, and then our UDO has areas where it says 5 stories, so we wanted to reduce that.
I had something on this one. In this particular section, I wanted to commend your Department, Heather and Kevin, and you guys with identifying the need to be able to make that designation in the light industrial district, specifically to the Buck Allen, Simmonsville area after the that project that was approved. Being able to put that language in there definitely helps to keep that neighborhood within the intended plan for that area. Are there other examples like that exist in our UDO that we may not be able to easily identify without going through a larger scale project that would trigger you to be like, oh, wow, that should have been updated?
We try, but every circumstance is unique. Sometimes we can see it ahead of time. We try to catch it. Unfortunately, sometimes they are reactive, like this example right here, whereas it was in that light industrial and it allowed for that higher stories and had the buildings brought up closer to the front. And from a mass and scale, we were concerned about that. So we wanted to address that moving forward.
Thank you. That was a great decision. And then on the setback, I see that we have an update on the rear yard setback. I had a question while I saw that on the front yard setbacks that are in the Old Town District, in the neighborhood general residential district, particularly with projects like the one on Girard. Have we looked to change those as well? Because I know there's a concern that there really is no delineation from where that road meets to like a person's front yard. It's like you go from, it's too close to the road. I don't know if anyone is
I know what you're talking about.
familiar with that. Can we look at?
They're considered a large mixed use?
No, she kind of jumped
She went
back
backwards
real quick to the
April amendments.
I know what you're referring to. And we can definitely look into that for second reading to make sure that it's consistent as well.
It was April, I saw that too, and you even actually said, I thought you said you're pushing the front back. I thought that you said that already.
Yes, we're pushing the front setbacks for the neighborhood core and neighborhood center
But
districts.
why aren't we looking at, I guess, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take over your question, but why just there? And, like when we did the riverfront edge on this square footage thing, are you testing it to see if you're going to come back to us, or should we look at the lots in other districts, or both of those actually, for what we did on riverfront edge of squashing and raising lot types? I don't know.
Yeah, currently in the neighborhood general district, all of the building types that are allowed are at 10 to either 15, 20, or 25. So they're already consistently at that minimum of 10-foot setback. So these other two districts have it at 0. So we're actually getting the two districts, the core and the center, to be consistent with the neighborhood general.
To follow up on Bridget's, just using a real life example on Girard, was that something the builder wanted to do because the only place he could put his garage was in the back?
Yes, all garages must be in the rear
So-
or set back from the back of the house.
So they were allowed currently to go almost 2 feet, 3 feet. There wasn't a minimum of 10 feet from the front, but now you're saying,
So that front setback in that area it's the building. So you have the structure of the building, and then you have a porch. So that 10-foot is typically at the structure itself, and your porch can go in front of that. So we do allow for porches in front of that front setback.
So technically, the steps coming off the front porch can be
In
on
the
the edge of the road.
of their lot,
Almost
Or their
within
property line.
of their lot line.
up to 3 feet. So 3 feet from the property line is where the steps could start.
I think that's something we definitely have to reconsider or look at, because that's way too close.
Well, we had done a ride around past leader people, And we did, Heather, you were with us, and we were just talking about why is everything so close, and it was because of the code. And really, to push it back, you feel more like Bluffton, not everything right, especially residentially. I know that traditional neighborhood development feel, but that, you're walking off your step and you're falling onto the sidewalk, really.
So what we can do from a staff level is we'll go back between second reading and look at maybe having some requirement for where steps and appurtenances, as we call them, how close they could be to the right-of-way. I mean, at that point, what that does is, some porches might be smaller than others. So, if maybe there's a 5-foot separation between property line, which is the right-of-way line, and where steps are allowed to start, like 5 feet, and then you can go back from there.
Right. Well, I would.
Especially,
No.
I would say, especially with an area unique like that traditionally that road should be a one-way, but it's used often as a two-way, and to have that and the steps of someone's front porch so close, it becomes a safety hazard concern for me too.
You can look at Gerard, you can look at Lawrence.
Yeah, Lawrence Street, right by mine, it's the same way. And I think that would encourage possibly more people to side load off the porch instead of right into the street.
I agree.
Which makes sense.
I like your idea about the porch going back, just having that change.
Yeah.
Yes, we can definitely look into that.
Are you good? Okay, so we're moving back to June, right? Wasn't that May? No.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. For June, we had a couple of items just dealing with public notices, just making sure, for no longer requiring a newspaper notice for a demolition when the site is being posted. So just minor items. We did go through Richardson just to make sure that that everything was okay on the state level with that. For the signs, we had a couple of items that were just inadvertently missed. We just wanted to make sure that we clarified what was considered prohibited signs, to make sure that like flutter signs and feather signs were not specifically described in the ordinance, and people have kind of questioned us on those, and we wanted to make sure that it was very clear that they were not allowed.
Does anyone know what those are?
Okay, I guess I don't.
Sideway banners, kind of.
Yes.
Oh, the one thing and the flag?
Yeah, the feathered ones are the ones I like on a pole, and they kind of hang off the back.
Yes.
There are a lot of them out there. I'd go in and let them know that's, okay.
Yes. And then also just making sure that certain signs are exempt from needing a sign permit. A construction sign, real estate signs, and campaign signs, just making sure that it was clear.
So this has nothing to do with flags?
No. Okay.
But the pole with the funky flag, that's what's called a flutter or
Yes.
feather. I've never heard of that. But, okay.
There's a whole world of signs.
Yeah, we don't talk about flags on porches.
Yeah, no. Some of the other items included, we're actually adding a new housing type. It's called the medium housing type. We're having concerns where individuals were coming up with a housing type, and there's tons of housing types out there, and we needed to add one that provided this is for residential building types, in that 1 to 2 stories. We were just lacking an area so that way people could have these 1.5 story houses, and we were classifying them as additional building types. So we wanted to bring it in and actually clarify what type of house that we were referencing when we were talking about additional building types.
That middle picture is on Gerard Street, and the post on those steps is on the sidewalk. So is the sidewalk on their property line?
I don't know.
But that is good for you to look at as to their concerns.
I don't know if it's on it, but it's coming out right out to it.
And also, we don't necessarily know where that right-of-way line is.
No, I don't. I'm just saying that is a
But I
good-
understand.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So, disclosure, my house, okay. What would my house be now? Because there's no building type for a 2-story house with the garage part of the house. And I counted today, there are 10 like that in Old Town. There are 4 in Stock Farm. What is a building type when we think the house just has an attached garage? while you're looking at building types, I think you should look at those too, if there are 10 that I found.
The more, what, got it.
It's, you know what it's called right now? An attached carriage house.
Yes, that is correct. Yes. The more conventional type of attached garages,
But I think
such as
if you're
yours.
looking at that, and I'll disclose it's mine, I think that scratches everyone's head when they think that a garage is part of your house because you have a room over it is called an attached carriage house.
A garage is a garage and a carriage house is a carriage house.
Anyway, just a question why you have it, because when I read that, I thought maybe the medium house is now my house type, but
Got
it's
it.
not.
Yes, and got it. I'll look into it, and what we'll do is we'll make sure that we get additional information on that, and if it's necessary, provide kind of that building type as well.
And while you're looking, I mean, growing up in a small town, your garage is part of your house. What if you have a house with a garage, but there's nothing above the garage, and it's all in one structure?
Yes,
What is
that's-
that? Is
that-
that an unconventional building?
Well,
type
that's,
then?
that, again, we classify that as the carriage house, so it's an attached carriage house. It's the carriage house can be either a garage, or it can be an apartment, it can be 2-story, it can be 1-story, but that's how it's an accessory structure. So,
Think through that, I think.
sure.
Yeah. I don't like that either.
Form-based code.
Has it been called that because a garage in theory could be converted or something? What presented it to be called that, I wonder?
What's
Had to
that?
be called something.
Carriage
Yeah,
house.
carriage house.
It pre-existed our
Yes,
current ordinance, so we
Yeah.
had to
Yes.
figure something out.
But you're getting to the world of today, and we saw it with the riverfront, where people who live there now need to expand out of necessity because they're older, but then we restricted them from ever adding on to bring a bedroom down. And most of the homes like that were pre-1996, really. So, and I literally read through Old Town, and I found 10. And I didn't work so hard to do it. So there are more.
yes.
And I think it's kind of like the non-conforming issue. I think we got to figure it out take me out of it, but for the 9 plus others. So, I'm trying to think. Your house has a garage attached.
It does.
Yeah, but that's called a carriage house.
Right. No, I get that today. I understand.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. The other item was to increase the side setbacks on a lot of the building types from 5 feet to 8 feet. Just a little bit more space on the sides.
You're gonna hurt some properties that's already in some ways they already have a plot, or they already have their minds that they can build a house because it's platted that way. So it's already a struggle for some residents to build that house, and if you increase that, they're not going to be able to build. And that's one of the things that concern me, even when we talk about the medium house right here. The part of that porch is on the sidewalk. We try to make Bluffton a walkable, especially Old Town, a walkable community. When I look at places in cities like Savannah, that's what they have as well. You know, they could, you almost walk right on your sidewalk is in somebody's step. So I wish maybe changing that side setback is going to hurt some smaller property owners.
Is that 3 foot wood?
Yes, sir.
No, he said from 5, the 3.
5 to 8, so it's a 3-foot difference.
That might make them go 6.
If I could, just,
Well, 6 foot overall, 3 feet on each side.
Is there a reason?
it's specifically for the neighborhood center district. So I've gone back, you can see that's the brown right there.
So all we're talking about right now are just these.
Where the 5 to 8 side setback is specifically for the what's in the brown there with the red star.
Help me, is that black line?
So the historic district is still,
That's Calhoun.
Yeah, I was gonna say, where's Calhoun?
Calhoun here, Bridge here, Boundary here.
So we're pushing them back and we're bringing them in. We're gonna force 2 stories. We're gonna force, can they do a driveway within that new setback?
Yeah. Yes.
And we limited the lot size a few years ago, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
50 feet.
50 feet.
But there are still some non-conforming 30s and 40s out there.
Right.
Is there purpose to make it harder to build a 1-story? I mean, 6 feet is a
Well, typically,
bathroom.
so, I mean, a 1-story, we have different building types that are 1-story. It's mainly the cottage, which is a smaller product. It's not your typical ranch-style home, what you would think of that would be allowed in the historic district here. So the bigger things that we're seeing is that people they're trying to maximize as much as they can, but then they also will start to put service yards on the side of their house. So their service yard is now going pretty much, they're trying to get it to their property line. We're having issues with stormwater where the water flow in between houses. The closer it is, the narrower it is for water to get through. So we're trying to space that out. So there's a lot of factors in play as to why we're trying to widen the space in between homes.
So I'm going to go back to an example, which I get what you're saying, and I'm fine if you want to change it. But I look at Frankie Coburn's property and the promenade. And the promenade probably had a 5 foot. It was a small setback, but by the time his roof came off, his roof extended 2 feet, and the rainwater went into Frankie's, he says, went over into his building, which caused his building to basically mildew and rot from within because the rainwater, while the roof was on the promenade's property line, it came right to the property line. So by pushing it 3 more feet, is that going to stop that? Or wouldn't it be easier to say, just anything that sticks out has to be, instead of 8 feet, 5 feet off the property line? It sounds like you're allowing the service yards to be built.
the less dirt, the less place you have for stormwater to even run. So not only is it going to have to run down a narrower ditch, so to speak, or a narrower space, but when that happens, it goes a lot faster. So therefore, it's going to go farther. And I mean, the more.
Then eliminate the side yard.
Well, if you got 2 roofs coming like this and you don't have but 12 feet in between them, you don't have.
How did you measure it from the roof?
Someone that has a small footprint would rather have a house than a side yard. So you eliminate the side yard. If you want your house, then you can't, with this footprint, you can't have a side yard.
If you eliminate the
bigger house you want,
it's on the property, the house would be on the property line.
I'm kind of thinking through those districts, which those districts have been divvied up pretty darn.
And if I could, so there were 36 pages, so I've been very high level on all of these. So what I've done is I've actually pulled that specific section so you can see that what's in black print right now is the existing text that we have. So we've highlighted the cells where we're making proposed changes, and then you can see that both including that medium house type here, but then these side setbacks, we're looking at adjusting that 1, 2, 3, 4 building types. We're adjusting that 5 foot side setback to 8 feet. So narrow down from 5 zoning districts in the historic district. We're focused on 1 district. That's the center. That's the Calhoun Bridge Boundary Square. And then of that, any building types that are allowed, which are listed here, the cells that are highlighted, we're proposing the change for those specific building types.
But did you do the homework maybe of looking at within that I bet we have a dozen 40-foot lots in there. What happens if somebody owns a 30 or 40-foot lot that was subdivided long ago, and now it's going to have an 8-foot setback? Is there some administrator oversight to that on a case-by-case basis, or is this, I'm trying to, because we've had a lot of issues with our UDO.
And that would be one of the, if someone were to come in and propose, like, hey, I need a variance to allow for a 5-foot, because my lot was already established prior to you changing the code, it's not my fault, and, you know, it's not a, you know, I'm drawing blank on the.
But I just don't want you to say send them to Board of Zoning Appeals, because it's not their fault, and now we're making them to do one more step.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going.
And it's.
I know that's where you're going.
And it's difficult for. It's difficult to look on a lot by lot basis, and then that's where, you know, we try to adjust these. Yes, there are lots that are smaller than that 50-foot minimum lot width, and they could come in to request a variance in order to, because it's an unnecessary hardship, something that was created outside of their control, and that they could potentially get a variance to allow for that.
We know that we have, and you mentioned this, do we know that we have 30-foot lots in this particular area?
That is where the beginning of subdividing went. The lots on Girard are 40.
Right.
So that's giving you an idea of what was 40.
Right.
And I don't know what was wrong with it. And we don't have a lot left in there, but I do think there'll be a situation, and then we're going to be like, oh, now we know better. So I'm just trying to think ahead of it. I don't know exactly. I could look before second reading and let you know.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see how profound of an issue it truly may be. I mean, I know that we were having requests for the smaller lots, which is why we made the 50-foot minimum in this particular area.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether there's still the 30s out there or not.
I've witnessed a couple of projects myself that this will cause a problem with.
Mm-hmm.
What we can do
I'm going to
is,
support him on it, and I already hear him over here. So I think if it's not her, if we don't have that many, why are we causing it? And let's just
sure, what we'll do is we'll
come back to us and say, hey, this is why I thought we needed to do 8-foot setbacks, and give us real examples of it.
got it.
I see you're trying to get it uniform. I see that.
Yeah. We'll look into that and definitely have it back in front of you, and we'll talk with the town manager to give him an update, and maybe be able to discuss with you at some point or another, just to make sure we're on the same wavelength, and we'll have that information updated.
I mean, Fred has some thoughts of one. Maybe y'all ride with him and give him look at what he's thinking, and vice versa, and let's see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
So is our thought to all of this, we would possibly vote on with no exceptions, and then it could be changed by second reading? Okay.
Okay, give me 1 second here. All right, so that was all of the text amendments boiled down, the 36 pages, into those few slides. So thank you very much. We had the review criteria. It met all the review criteria. And then the Planning Commission, they did recommend on the 4 different meetings to approve. The revisions that they had noted were in the staff report and had been updated with those texts as well. This evening, you have the action to approve with any additional conditions or amendments, or to deny the request. From a step standpoint, we have it scheduled, obviously first reading this evening, final reading in August. If necessary, with discussions with the town manager, if we need to move that, which I don't think we should, but we should be able to get this back in front of you in August for a second reading. With that, if there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, I do have a proposed motion for you.
Yes.
So the second was with an amendment, and you're saying, and as I looked at Stephen, if we're all made, with the exception of, and I wrote 3 different items, should we pass this knowing you have those concerns to make changes before second reading?
And the items that I've been writing down was, number 1 was dealing with neighborhood general historic district, specifically regarding steps and what we call appurtenances. So what we'll look to do is to maybe adjust, and not just there, but other places, to make sure that we're pushing things back away from the sidewalk. Look at the conventional building type. In reference to your home, what you talked about with existing houses that have garages, and how we're going to address those. And then the side setback item, that we'll look into that to make sure that we are addressing that, not just for that one specific district, but we'll look at the other districts as well to make sure that we're consistent through there.
And if we come back at second reading and any of those items you still feel uncomfortable with, you can always remove them prior to, or vote to approve it with those excluded during second reading.
Okay. So our homework to you would be try to get with you on ideas of places where we're concerned.
Yes.
I will find lot dimensions to see how many vacant lots in that district are less than 50. I can do that easy. And I know y'all can too, but you got a lot of writing to do. That what y'all understand? Okay. I just have a question on this riverfront thing. Are we looking with, Larry had mentioned one day about we should look at lot size with this 2,000 minimum heated square footage, and we changed it at the riverfront edge. Is that something y'all are looking at down the road, like in January or whatever, to extend that to other districts because it's working well? Or are you waiting on us to have someone fuss about it, where you can have a base footprint of 2,500 square feet? You know, where we change that? Because I think in a lot of these residential areas, really all through Old Town, you see larger parcels that might actually need to do that. So I don't know if that's something down the road. It's definitely new for here, but.
Yeah, and if it's suitable for the waterfront lots, then it should be suitable for anywhere. I mean, that's the way I think about it.
So you're looking to adjust?
Not tonight, I'm just asking. I think
Right.
that's another, I don't think that has to go through planning commission. Something totally.
To
If
be
I can go with this, I think you should.
Yeah, to be consistent with the strat plan, what we can do is we can do another joint meeting in January, and then we can work on fleshing that out.
I think it was a good meeting.
Yeah, I think so, too.
I wasn't here, but.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and that's an item that we can definitely, that'll give us an opportunity to do some research on it, and maybe we can talk offline.
So is there a 2,000 square foot limit on footprint in all of
They're different.
district, or
It
just
yes, it depends on the building type, the type of building that allows for the size of the building.
like a one-story house building, no matter what it's built out of?
A medium house.
Yes.
If a medium house is 2,000 square feet, what is their maximum heated footprint for their first floor on this new building type?
If you only want to build a one-story house, does it have to be?
Necessarily. It depends again on your building type. So you have to fit, remember, because we do the form-based code, it has to fit in the box. So if your lot's a certain width, then you can build a certain style house. So it gets a lot more complicated than you just want to do a single story.
We looked at the riverfront, if I remember correctly, the way we approached it was we saw that the scale of the houses and the size of the lots justified giving them a little leniency to go up in footage. So really, this is a whole different discussion.
I thought so too.
So they didn't go up in footage. What we did is we allowed them to kind of squash it down and go out. Is they were allowed to keep their square footage remain the same, but instead of having to go 2.5 stories to get there, they were able to spread out at 1 story or 1.5 story if they needed to.
Right.
So we can take what we did on the waterfront, and we can do some research into that, and between strategic plan and joint, we can look at that more over the next couple months.
It's not now, but after I really started looking at the residency and age and everything, I didn't realize it was such a confinement, really. until that came up.
You see things when you get older you didn't see before.
Yeah. Okay. So any other questions of Kevin? He did a great job on his 158-page presentation. Kevin, I think you well thought out, all the staff.
Thank you, yes.
Is there a motion to approve certain amendments to the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinances, Chapter 3, Article 3, Section 3.2, 3.14, 3.17, 3.18, 3.19, and 3.25, Article 4, Section 4.4, Article 5, Section 5.8, 5.11, 5.14, 5.15, Article 7, Article 9, Section 9.2, 9.3, 9.4.1, as presented tonight. All the details.
So moved.
There you go. Is there a second?
I second that shortcut.
Thank you. Any discussion? Is that appropriate?
It was.
Thank you. All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Kevin. Next is Heather, and it's a first reading, and it's ordinance amending our code, Chapter 21, Emergency Permitting Procedures to consolidate all regulations pertaining to emergency management and civil emergencies within one chapter.
Yeah, just disable the keyboard's not working.
Oh, the
Wasn't that it?
keyboard's not working. Sorry. I'm going to be much faster here, so I guess I have to do this from here. Sorry. Technical difficulties. Okay, so mine's going to be much more concise. I really don't have a lot to go over in a presentation, but really what this is doing is we're making some amendments to the ordinances that are related to emergency management and emergency permitting. So what we're trying to do is there's no substantial content changes to this. What this attempt was is to bring everything related to emergency management, emergency permitting, and now we're calling it civil emergencies because we had the pandemic, something that, we were really specific with some things that we were referencing, is to get them all in one concise chapter and one location in the ordinance. And that's really to eliminate possible oversight, because you may not know that you need to go to 3 different places to know what to do if an emergency strikes. So really, obviously, you can approve it just like you did before, make some modifications or deny it. This is the proposed motion, but I will state that there's references in Chapter 2 about administration. How do we declare an emergency? What do we do? What's that process? Then Chapter 5, if you recall, a couple of years ago, you all adopted an ordinance for development sites and what you have to do to really make those sites tidy and secure before an emergency. That was in Chapter 5 with building codes. And then there's emergency permitting, which is in Chapter 21. So what I did was pulled everything in one chapter, and this will make it easier now for our new emergency manager, Lieutenant Carafa. He can make any substance changes as he works through it. So just wanted to really set it up a little bit easier in one spot to move forward. So that's really all that's before you tonight.
Questions on this side? Questions? So is this now going to be Chapter 21?
Yes. Now it is going to be titled Chapter 21, Emergency Management, Civil Emergencies. It was previously titled Emergency Permitting.
So Chapter 2 and Chapter 5 info is going to be repeated in Chapter 21?
It's moved. It will be relocated.
Be relocated. Okay. Other questions? Is there a motion to approve the amendments to the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinances, Chapter 21, Emergency Management, Civil Emergencies?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Do I have to recuse myself when she speaks? Because she's my neighbor.
Oh, maybe. You got to recuse yourself from Christie.
It's too late now.
Uh-oh, I wouldn't have asked that. Okay, so Kim, you're up. You have 1, 2, 3 items, and we put these on here because it's a large number, and you don't have to be so lengthy if you don't want to be.
Yes, ma'am,
First is the lighting agreement with Dominion for Oyster Factory parking lot project. Do you need to recuse yourself?
I believe we skipped one.
4.
We skipped 4, ma'am.
Does he?
What's that?
Does Larry need to recuse himself?
Number 4, he will not need to. You skipped number 4.
I did skip number 4.
It's okay, I can adjust.
You know where we're talking about.
Know where I am.
Update the 2004 May River Watershed Baseline Assessment. This is a contract with DNR for an impact of $155,000.
So good evening, Mayor and Council. We did an initial baseline assessment of the May River conditions back in 2002, 2003, with a final report delivered to the town in 2004. The purpose of the baseline condition report of the May River was to do exactly that, get a baseline of the biological and abiotic factors in the May River prior to major development. As part of the May River Watershed Action Plan Advisory Committee's priority recommendations for the strategic plan for years 2023 through 2024, they recommended an update to this plan since it's been, or assessment, since it's been 20 years, just to see beyond the, I know it's gone fast, hasn't it? Beyond the oyster bed closure in the upper third of the river, how is the overall health of the river in other aspects? They made that recommendation to council. You all approved that and included it in your budget. So DNR, who is specifically qualified to perform this analysis for us, will take the sampling over the next year, and by the end of the calendar year of 2024, have their assessment done and a final report in our hands within 60 days, and that is within this year's budget. So our request is that you go ahead and authorize the town manager to execute this contract with the DNR for $155,000, and if it is so recommended, as I said, they're going to perform that assessment over 2023 remainder through 2024, and within the first 60 days of 2025, so February, March of 2025, we would get that final report back from them.
Other questions of Kim on this? Yes, sir.
How are we monitoring it now? And who do we pay?
We're not. So we do monitoring in the major drainages leading to the river. DHEC does the actual shellfish sampling in the river for fecal coliform, but we are not monitoring in the river for turbidity, for dissolved oxygen, salinity. DHEC takes a salinity measure when they take a fecal coliform measure. So that's what I'm saying. We have not done an assessment like this in a holistic sense in over 20 years.
Mayor, I want to say, I used to talk to Kim about that quite a bit. I could never understand the health, safety of people, how we didn't ever do that. So I'm ecstatic that this is happening. This is great. When I read your report, I'm like, okay, finally we're doing it. So thank you.
It just gives us something to compare to 20 years later.
The other thing I will say is, I like to use the data to give you policy suggestions and make decisions upon. Right now, we know, at least from a fecal coliform point of view, that our stormwater ordinance needed to be ratcheted down and looked at regionally. This can give us data in a different way to look at other portions of our UDO, which the stormwater ordinance sits in, how are our intentions being met through our policies and regulations. If we're not seeing an overall change in the health, the environmental health of the river, considering the growth we've had, minus perhaps the loss of shellfish harvesting, we've done really well. But if we are seeing indications that we're losing perhaps nursery, what have you, some sediment changes, that's going to inform future management decisions, and we'll have that good science to base it on.
Yeah, my question just was, so it's been 20 years since the last study or analysis was conducted. What's the estimated time in terms of how often should this analysis be performed?
Probably better, especially because of the rate of development we had. We should have probably done it 10 years ago, to be quite honest with you. At that point in time, though, we were so focused on really trying to nail down what the sources of fecal coliform were, and we knew that was the elephant in the room and the impairment we had. We put this on the back burner, limited resources addressing the immediate concern. But my suggestion would probably be on a decadal basis.
So does this need to be something, Mayor, that we as council opt to make sure it stays on a regular basis, to do it routinely every 10 years?
I mean, we all might not be up here in 10 years. I would ask Stephen what the process is to make it mall, how would we do that? Not on a vote tonight, we're going to have to bring.
I would think it would probably be more of a policy,
I was gonna say,
internal
right.
policy thing for us, kind of like we talked about when we did the community survey, is every 2 to 3 years, we probably want to revisit it just to keep up. Is same thing with this, is every 10 years, we probably just want to check in and do all that. I think we can make it more of a policy thing internally and add that as a strategic plan item moving forward that we want to continue to manage and check baselines.
What I was going to say is the May River Watershed Action Plan is a supplemental and supporting document to the comprehensive plan and also informs what we do for the strategic plan and the recommendations we bring forward. So we just updated the action plan, and one of the recommendations in the action plan was, hey, y'all need to do an assessment again. You haven't done one in a while. So recognizing that, as we always say, these are all living documents. The May River Watershed Action Plan is as well and needs to be updated probably more frequently, like every 5 years or so. And I'm sure that that recommendation then would roll in there, and then that's what feeds into strategic planning, into budgeting, into work plan.
Right, and I think, Stephen, I was along the same lines of putting it into the policy, because Samir's point, we all may not be here in 10 years, but the intent is to have a policy that will reflect that, because we all have the same intent that we want to make sure we leave the place better than what we found it. So I think keeping that in place to proceed even after us would be good.
And I would even, we're 80% residentially built out, but with commercial behind should there be changes with commercial buildings? Should you really consider every 5 years?
Potentially so.
I'm curious this compared to 20 years ago. I wouldn't just say 10 because we said it.
No. And I would ask when we work on the scope, the full scope with DNR, we'll ask them for a recommendation. Based on what they're seeing, you had this much change over 20 years, perhaps you need to do this more frequently. Maybe it's 3 to 5, maybe it's 5 to 7. I'll ask them for that part of their final report.
Right, and with technology changing and such, I mean, we see it every day with our phones and just everyday life. They can do so much more and now than they could 20 years ago. So we got to keep up with the times, and I'm fine with doing it every 5 years.
I'll ask them to include that recommendation in their final report.
Questions? I would ask you to take this to your counterpart in Hardeeville and in Beaufort, and maybe we can talk about it at SoLoco with our regional stormwater plan that we all have, to let them know what we're doing, because I think they need to get started on it.
That's an excellent idea.
Okay.
Excellent.
No other questions? Is there a motion to approve authorizing the town manager to execute a contract between the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and the town of Bluffton to update the 2004 May River watershed baseline assessment for $155,000?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Kim, this next one, 5, is a proposed lighting agreement with Dominion Energy for Oyster Factory Park parking lot project, fiscal impact of $105,445.20.
And I'd like to recuse myself from this, just one item, please.
Okay, so Mr. Toomer has recused himself.
Yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. We currently have improvements occurring at Oyster Factory Park parking lot with the completion of 35 car spaces and 11 cart spaces and additional green space lawn. Landscaping is a portion of that project and is underway and will be completed by the end of August. An additional portion of the project is to include LED lighting for safety for pedestrians who will be accessing a sidewalk along Wharf Street in the park, as well as within the parking lot itself. So the scope of this agreement is with Dominion Energy as our service provider to have the LED lights. They will be on the Shepherd's Crook lighting poles that we currently have throughout the historic district. The reason this is really coming before you not only is because of the threshold of over $100,000, it's because it's a 10-year agreement. So you are committing future councils to this agreement with Dominion. An interesting change in policy on Dominion's side to point out to you, because when I come back to you potentially next month, if it's not on consent, is Dominion no longer offers us the ability to buy the poles. They now have and retain the ownership of the poles, which means we will require their approval for all of our banners and lighting fixtures, cameras, all of that. So just to point that out. I'm sorry?
Can we go in and tell them we're going to need that permission?
Yep. Oh, they know. They know. But still, it'll probably be another agreement that I'll need to bring back.
That's concerning.
May I jump in, Mayor? I was going to say, they have calculations for all of that up to the type size of the signage based on wind loading and everything. So they probably have in their specs already written. It might be something that we should incorporate over to get with them on their specs to see what they already have so we can match with what we have and see that there's not a conflict there.
Okay.
You'll know that without having to get their permission every single time, I would think. Now, they don't want you to bore into their pole. You can strap it. But anyway,
Right.
It's good to know. Just good information.
Okay, thank you for that perspective. I appreciate it. So we're putting in 10 polls. Monthly cost for those 10 polls, $878.71. Annually, we're talking about a commitment of $10,554.52. Over the span of the 10 years is where you hit the $105,445.20. This is currently what the parking lot in the pathway is looking like. So the lights will be interspersed throughout that area. Again, for safety, they will match what we currently have. And so we are requesting that you authorize the town manager to execute a contract with Dominion for the span of 10 years for the set amount for lighting service and lighting components at Oyster Factory Park.
Any questions? Do we own them after 10 years?
I'm sorry?
Do we own them after 10 years?
No.
We're just committed at that price for 10 years.
Any other questions?
Is there a motion to authorize the town manager to execute a contract with South Carolina, oops, wrong one, and enter to a lighting agreement with Dominion Energy for lighting installation and lighting services at the Oyster Factory Park for $105,445.20?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4, 1 recusal. Your number 6.
Right along.
Purchase agreement with Green Flush Technologies for the New River Linear Trail, $200,730.
So with especially the $2 million appropriation that we all appreciate from Senator Davis for the improvements of the New River Linear Trail, we definitely are anticipating increased use out there. The project scope on this one is to use a Green Flush vaulted facility that does not need to be connected to sewer and to water lines from BJWSA. So this is a standalone facility that will have its own well to provide the water, and then it will be pumped out. Essentially, please forgive me when I say it, it's a fancy portalette, but a really nice one. Really, really nice one. Underneath the state contract, we actually save some money, 1% discount on it. And because, again, it is standalone and we're not having to pay those connections and extensions to BJWSA water and sewer, it's saving us a lot of money on that particular aspect of it. We looked, and personally I visited, this is where I saw Councilwoman Frazier's cousin. Was it your cousin, right?
It is.
Up in Hollywood, I visited one of their facilities up there. It was really nice. She did a really nice job decorating it with flowers. I don't know that we're going to do that, but this is what it will look like, and so it'll be family friendly on both sides, and comes prefab, gets installed on site. We'll have the water, the well run to it. So what we're requesting is that you authorize the town manager to execute the contract with Green Flush Technologies for a contract price of $182,482 plus a 10% contingency of the $18,248. And I'm presenting this to you a little bit differently as a total fiscal impact instead of before I was giving you a contract price plus 10 or 20% and never giving you a final number. So it's a little bit different this time. And this is the way we'll do it moving forward so that you know what it is as a total price. So we're looking at a total fiscal impact of $200,730 to complete this project.
Any questions of Jim on this?
How much is, yes, go Larry, let Larry go first.
This is going in the parking lot
In the
area.
parking lot of New River Linear Trail, along with some lighting and the well.
We have power there.
I think, well, we're working with Dominion. They're part of the necessary stakeholders to get there.
There's light
some.
there at night.
I've never pulled in there.
There you go.
I think there's power at the edge. We're working with them to get it to the location where this is going.
Yeah, and I can only say I'm fine with doing it. I'm sure it's needed. But also some automatic locks.
You don't want it open all night.
At a certain time, because that's pretty far out in the boonies, out in the middle of nowhere. So I could just imagine we'd have problems with vandalism and other issues. So.
I agree.
And we're working with IT on cameras, and if we can get cameras out there for safety cameras and things like that too.
Yes, how much does the building cost, standalone building cost?
The standalone building cost is $182,482, and that includes, let me go back. That includes, does my mouse show up here? Yes. Here it goes, off-site construction, delivery, and installation of the prefabricated restroom.
Well, your bottom line says what it is. It's sealed, it's
Bolted,
contained, it's
contained, ADA
compliant,
compliant.
it's odorless.
That includes the well, right?
This whole price is, all in as well.
So the well's got to
So
be
the well as well. Mhm.
182 includes the well?
Thank you. Any other questions? Two things. Security, I think you really need to think about what kind of cameras and all we need to put on there and do it now. The vandalism, absolutely. I don't know who's gone there lately under the bridge, but we need to keep an eye on that. And I love the lock idea, but on that drawing, I saw a water bottle fill up. I hope that would be well water, so I don't think we need that.
Okay.
Would you drink well water?
Why not?
I grew up on it personally. But
I grew up on well water.
It'll be filtered, just like.
Will it be filtered?
Yeah, the water bottle dispensers, they usually have a filter in them.
Yeah, through those
Like the
machines.
ones in the hallways.
Okay.
Like right out the end of the hall.
Oh, you-
I bet we need signage.
You were fancy in Prosperity. We had wells down here.
I think this world that we live here needs to know that's
Well water, some signage.
Signage, yes, ma'am.
Well water and then look at the water.
Who all here has drank well water?
Well, there you go.
From the hose,
Why we
right?
have
Well water from the hose.
That's all we had.
Miss Prosperity.
Yes.
That's all they had in Prosperity. That's all they had.
Well, I think with the people who aren't used to well water down, that have moved here, they need to know they're drinking well water.
That's
That will be a
easily solved.
complaint email.
But the machines, if they're similar to the ones that are Oscar Fraser, there's a filter on it too anyway. So it does filter it if that makes a difference for them.
There's no chlorine in well water.
Okay. If you got to add something on security, y'all need to address that. because-
Yes, I will work on that.
Okay. Any other questions? Is there a,
Sure.
Is there a motion to approve all of that? No, to authorize the town manager to execute a contract with Green Flush Technologies for $182,482 plus a 10% contingency of $18,248 for a total fiscal impact of $200,730, which is the budget for fiscal year 2024 to construct restroom facilities at New River Linear Trail Project.
So moved.
There's second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you.
Did we ask when that's going to be finished? Will it be on our list of, will it be 6
I will,
months or-
yes, I will get that from Constance. I think that's before the end of the year. It shouldn't
Just get
take
it.
that long.
So the consent agenda has the best of reports for Tom, who's hanging through this whole council meeting. Thank you. The most important reports are what we're about to pass and not go over. The department reports are awesome, and our town manager monthly report. Is there anything out of here y'all want to bring all for discussion? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Is there a motion to go into executive session for 2 items, discussions relating to negotiations and contractual arrangements for proposed land acquisition in Old Town, May River Road, Buck Island, Cemetery, and that's Act 3470A, and legal advice from town attorney regarding contractual matters regarding economic development, public-private partnership, and that also is FOIA Act 3470A2.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So, Stephen, do you want to say who's in and who can go home? Come out of executive session, no action was taken, no votes were made. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Amen.
We're done.